What's up, my people? We have made no secret of the fact that we are loving what DC is doing with the new Absolute Universe, and today we're back at it with the first complete story arc from the Absolute Superman book titled The Last Dust of Krypton, which is found in issues 1 through 7. This story is an amazing introduction to this very different take on Kal-El and Superman, and one that gives us most of his origin story as well as the introduction of this world's version of Brainiac. But enough with the setup, let's just dive in with Absolute Superman issue 1. Also, if you dig this video, do us a solid by hitting the like button and dropping a comment down below. And make sure to check out the rest of our videos on the Absolute Universe as well. With that said, on with the show.
The issue starts off years ago, 9 million light years from Earth. As captions of Kal-El say, the planet Krypton was ruled by its cities, sprawling centers of advanced science and ancient law, like Kandor, with its lab-grown gardens and lava-powered energy plants, and its supercapacitors, the sides of skyscrapers made entirely of sunstone crystal. In the cities worked the clerics of the Science League, harnessing the energies of the red sun and the planet itself to fuel their insatiable hunger for progress at all costs. They were the Kryptonian ruling class, the most venerated minds on the planet, and my parents were not among them. We are then taken somewhere to a farm on Krypton. We learn that Kal-El is a mechanic and helping a farmer fix the harvester. They start talking about the Sky Department being late with the rain. Through the conversation, we learn that the upper class is in charge of the Sky Department and control the rain. And blue-collar folk like this farmer have to pay a crap ton of money to buy rain from the Sky Department for their crops. After Laura fixes the farmer's harvester, he wants to pay her with a basket of her husband's favorite berries, aka Jor-El. She tells the farmer he's going under today, with him replying, "Must have gone under 1,000 times by now, right?" She answers, 3,475. So how come this time my gut's all twisted and in knots? Just as she says that, the rain the farmer ordered shows up. Kal-El then says in captions, "In school, my mother was an exemplary student. Destined for great things, everyone said, until she wrote an essay criticizing Krypton's lack of funding for interstellar exploration. For this, she was labeled unruly and forbidden from ever applying to the Science Academy. She was 9 years old. She wanted to be an astronaut." We then get a double-page spread that really explains this version of Krypton and how it works. Kal explains to us that the class structure on Krypton defined all aspects of life. At its pinnacle reigned the Science League. On the bottommost rung of that ladder toiled the Labor Guild. Class distinctions were of such importance that citizens were required to wear their status at all times. The crest of the laborer was seen as a mark of shame, the sign of the poor and unskilled. People like my parents wore it with pride. "We were the children of the sun," they said, "those who made their way with their own two hands. We were the people of steel." As we see that their crest is what we know as the iconic Superman and House of El symbol. I love that it says we were the people of steel, playing off of Superman's iconic Man of Steel nickname. Very smart on Jason Aaron. And we also see the Science League of Krypton's elite wears a sun crest, which kind of reminds me of Nuclear Man from Superman 4 Quest for Peace. After this, we are taken underground where we see Jor-El going under, which is what Laura was talking about to the farmer earlier. And him going under is not like him going under the knife for surgery, no. Literally going under Krypton to their minds, as Jor-El is literally looking for stress fractures as he has concerns about the mind's stability. But of course, he's interrupted by one of the higher-ups who doesn't care what he's doing and just talks over all of Jor-El's concerns, saying, "Take a good long look at my chest, then glance down at yours. Go march yourself upstairs and tell those diggers the League of Middle Management said to get their sorry skin sacks back to work." But just as they're about to go to the surface, the minds start to rumble. As captions from Kal-El say, "My father was set to graduate the Science Academy with impeccable marks. A high-ranking position in the ruling class awaited him. At his graduation ceremony, he gave a speech condemning what he saw as the Science League's environmental recklessness. The pillaging of Krypton's natural resources was endangering the planet, he warned, and without drastic reform could someday lead to global catastrophe. My father was laughed out of his graduation, out of his position in the League, out of his life as he knew it. But he was right. As we see the mines of Krypton start to erupt with green lava shooting everywhere, which I imagine is this universe's version of kryptonite. Anyway, Kal goes on to say, "My homeworld was rotting from within, and all of Krypton was doomed. The towering cities, the windswept redlands, the purple farms and crystal forests, and great glass mountains of Zard, the scientists, the laborers, all of it, all of Krypton was doomed. Almost all of it," which is obviously a foreshadow of his survival. But up until this point, we are being introduced to a Superman who does not come from a highborn family on his home world, but instead has some blue-collar man of the people blood running through his veins, which by itself will likely lead to a much more grounded and relatable Superman, at least in theory. Alright, jumping back to Absolute Superman, on the next page we are taken to Brazil on present-day Earth, where we learn via narration by Kal-El yet again that migrant workers miners in Brazil are being forced by the Lazarus Corp, which is basically a military consisting of Peacemaker soldiers, to mine for diamonds in asbestos-filled caves for little to no wages. The miners expect that what they do here in the darkness will be the death of them. They do it nonetheless, in the name of their family. But one day when they go down, they see a bunch of diamonds have already been mined and crushed. A group of the miners ask, who did this? How is this even possible? The crusher hasn't even been used, and there's no asbestos in the air. Like, it's simply gone. This doesn't make any sense. Who was down here? Another miner says, no one was down here. This is a miracle. Then another says, this is madness. We need to tell someone. As another miner guy says, no, we say nothing. Our work here is done, brothers and sisters. Do you understand me? All that's left is for us to take these diamonds to the surface and claim our pay. When they do, the Peacemakers say they're already coming out with diamonds? That's impossible. We are then taken to the previous night where apparently Kal-El met with the migrant workers as just a new outsider, and while talking to them learned what they were going through and secretly decided to help them out. Then back to now, one of the Peacemaker kicks one of the miners saying, do you think we're stupid? Those diamonds didn't mine themselves. Someone among you enjoys breaking the peace. Who is it? After everything Lazarus has done for you animals, Lazarus means life, but maybe for you, it's gotta mean, and before he could finish his sentence, another Peacemaker says, sir, the head count is complete. All workers reported for their shift today, all but one. As we are taken to Kal-El, who's charging with the solar panel and some cables connected to his suit, as some sort of AI or robot talks to him saying, warning, Peacemakers approaching, conflict imminent, solar charging suspended, instigating wake-up procedures. Kal-El then says, I should have gone on to the next mine, next corporate pig farm or sweatshop factory. Years of running all across this planet, from the jungle to the big waters to wherever you call those places that are nothing but sand. And it's always the same. Always misery, always Lazarus. Except this time I've left myself weak and sun-starved, dreaming of the time so long ago when I still knew who I was. At this point, Lazarus comes busting into his hut, but Kal-El just delivers a fiery punch that sends their whole police car flying. He then says, maybe it's for the best I hadn't already left, because after years of watching these people treat the poorest and lowest among them as little more than cattle, I've got tired of running. We then see Kal lay into all the Lazarus while his AI continues to say, like the other Lazarus Corp forces we've encountered, their weapons and armor incorporate technology not native to this galaxy. Kal asks, will they live if I hit them? The AI responds, yes, but I still advise against that, as Kal then starts taking all of them out. His AI then says, this is a planet of combustion engines, fanatical religions, and thermonuclear weapons. These people are never safe, and neither are you if you insist on exerting yourself in this manner. Your solar energy levels are quite depleted. But he responds, the workers are in danger and it's my fault. All I did was try to help. As Kal is about to get out of Dodge, he is struck by Lazarus drones. As reinforcements come in, and we see that one of those reinforcement soldiers is actually Lois Lane, who tells her commander, like before, there's some kind of interference with the images. It's the suit. If you look closely, you could see it shifting, changing shape like living armor protecting him. And sometimes I swear he's talking to it, which tells us this AI that Kal has been talking to is actually his suit, which is pretty amazing, and apparently he could shift and reform like living armor. In any case, after this, Kal gets fed up with all the drones and releases a massive solar blast, frying every drone around him. But at this point, helicopters start landing, tanks start showing up, and Kal's suit says, it's my mission to protect you, to guard the last living vestige of House of El. So I must urge you yet again, do not engage. Do not risk your life for these people. Leave this place. Return to the shadows, please. You must never forget the lesson of Krypton. Some worlds simply cannot be saved, not from themselves. The Lazarus soldiers at this point start charging Kal, and with him weakened by dispersing so much solar energy, he says, maybe you're right, Soul. This was a bad idea, and I don't really feel so great. Let's get out of here. But as he's about to, a handcuff is thrown around his wrist as we see it's Agent Lane saying, suspect in custody. She then points a gun at him saying, move and I fry your face, Superman, telling us in this universe, she's the one who inadvertently created his name. We are then taken to the Nevada desert at a military base where we see someone in a room that's lit up purple saying, well now, what have we here? A scrumptious new toy. Wonder where you came from. As we see from behind, this is Brainiac, and he is behind the Lazarus Corp. We also see all the bottled cities around him in his lab. We even see one of the bottled cities is screaming, kill us, please kill us, which is very grim. We then get a page of Central Kansas where we see the Kent's old farmhouse is now the property of the Lazarus Corp, and it's completely abandoned and run down, before ultimately going back to years ago on Krypton in the Redlands where we see Jor-El get back from his mining. He survived the explosions and tells Laura, we can't tell anyone yet, you understand? Not until we're certain. We must be certain before we warn the world. Look at it, Laura, the beauty of it. I want us to remember it like this. Once it's gone, she says, gone? No, Jor-El, tell me you don't mean. But he then yells for Kal saying, where is Kal? Laura, where is our son? She says, he's all right, he's here. As we see about a 10-year-old Kal-El walk up to his father father with Krypto saying, "Dad, are you okay?" Jor-El says, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, son." Laura says, "Your father is going to be fine, Kal. We're all going to be all right. I'm sure whatever this is, we'll get through it like we always do, together," as they hug with more of that green gas seeping through the cracks of Krypton, and just like that, Absolute Superman comes to an end. Issue 2 starts off 6 years ago in the Redlands on Krypton. We see a young Kal-El doing school via a video call with the rest of his classmates as his teacher congratulates his students on their papers. But when he gets to Kal, he says, "Kal, I'm confused about what you turned in here. Your story about the dangers faced by loggers in the glass forest of Eureka is quite descriptive, but it doesn't appear to employ any generative text at all. You did source this directly from the cleric's luminarium, didn't you?" Kal, with his face down on his desk, says, "I wrote it." His teacher says, "Kal, I can't see you, and please speak up." Kal then looks into the camera saying, "I wrote it." His teacher is all like, "You wrote this yourself." Kal, the luminarium contains all knowledge of the Science League from throughout Kryptonian history and could answer any question we might ever possibly ask. Why would you? Kal, I'd like to talk to you and your parents after class. The book then takes us back to the present where we left off in issue 1 on Earth in Brazil, where Agent Lois has handcuffed herself to Kal with some special metal cuffs. She then points her gun at him saying, "Get on your knees. You're being detained by the authority of the Lazarus Corp. On your damn knees now." But Kal just pulls his arm up to look at the cuff, which causes her to trip. While he looks at it, he says, "Okay, I can't break this. What are these chuffs made of?" Soul, his AI built into his suit, says, "Cuffs, Kal. You are weakened. You are vulnerable here." He says, "I'm chuffed to her. What do you want me to do, Soul? Rip her arm off?" And at that moment, she blasts him in the face with her gun as Soul says, "I will deal with the handcuffs," as the suit makes some kind of lava energy type substance around the handcuffs. Lane then says, "This is Agent Lane. Target suit is reactive. It's crawling up my arm," and Kal tells Soul not to hurt her. He responds, "Kal, I'm not the one you should be worried about," as the Lazarus military points all their guns at him. But it is interesting that even with her trying to bring him in, he still doesn't want to hurt her at all, showing us this is still a Superman that puts all lives before his own, even if they're trying to harm him. Anyway, of course, on the next page, the Lazarus Corps opens fire on him, but he shields Lois and himself from it with his cape that comes out of his suit, like a red mist, which we are seeing for the first time. While being shielded by him, Lois says, "Let go of me. Get this thing off me." He tells her, "Did you forget you're the one who chuffed me?" It's really funny that it's an ongoing thing that Superman keeps calling it chuffed instead of cuffed. Soul then says the cuffs are fascinating. This metal reforms itself as quickly as I can sever it. This will take some time. Kal says, "We don't have time," as Lane shoots him in the face with her gun again, and Kal tells her, "Stop doing that." She says, "Oh, so now you're talking to me?" He says, "Yes, because you're making it very difficult to save your life." She tells him, "Lazarus doesn't want you dead, just on your knees. Do it and this will all be over." Kal then tells Soul, "Use the dust to hold onto Lane," the dust being his cape. "Don't let it rip her apart." That's right, his cape is apparently made of some sort of red dust that can be controlled by his suit, which is pretty freaking cool. Kind of reminds me of Spawn's cape, where it could be manipulated and used as a shield and change its size. He then leaps in the air as the cape is holding onto Lane with Lazarus flying behind him, saying, "Holy hell, he's flying," requesting permission to engage. The Peacemakers give permission, saying the Brainiac system suggests chem rounds level 11. The other Peacemaker says, "Will do, though I can't guarantee the safety of the agent." As the other one tells them, "Nobody's asking you to, Peacemaker," as they fire the chem rounds at Superman. They hit his cape and explode as we see Superman and Lane land safely on the ground with not even a scratch. Although when she gets on the ground, she shoots him in the face again with her gun, and then says into her radio, "This is Agent Lane. Suspect leaped due east, approximately 8 miles to the town of..." But before she's able to complete transmitting her position, we see that Supes has recovered and used his solar power to jam her transmission. What I find interesting is that she said the suspect leaped, meaning he might not be able to fly yet, just jump extremely long distances. Because remember, Superman wasn't always able to fly. That ability was given to him later. Originally, the Golden Age Superman was only able to jump extremely long distances, hence the faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. So I think Lois using the word leap was definitely not an accident and more of a callback to Superman when he first started in the Golden Age, and then later he'll learn to fly, which I think is what's going to happen here. On the next page, after Lane tried to radio their location into Lazarus, Kal tells her, "I just saved your life several times, and you want to arrest me for it?" She says, "No, you willingly endangered my life by trying to escape lawful custody, which you're not going to do. You endangered everyone by being whatever the hell it is you are. What are you?" He says, "Just another child of the dirt trying to get by." She responds, "Right, so you're a hippie who's bulletproof and can jump really far." Telling us, yeah, he can't fly yet, just jump really far. She continues to say, "Is it the suit that makes you special? Who's Saul? People have a right to know." He tells her, "Since when does Lazarus Corps give a damn about anyone's rights? We're all just a bunch of livestock to people like you." She tells him, "You don't know any hate people like me, sunshine, believe me. With him saying, arrogant, cares only about herself, angry at anyone you think isn't as smart as you, which is usually everyone who opens their mouth in your vicinity. You're everything that's wrong with your planet. She says, my planet, with Soul saying, stop Kal-El, stop talking right now. He responds, she's not worth talking to anyway. Will you get these cuffs off already? She then asks, so what's your planet? As they start getting shot at by Lazarus. Kal then yells to everyone in the town to get off the streets and get somewhere safe as he picks up a car and throws it at a Lazarus flying tank while telling Lane, do you see? This is what Lazarus thinks of us. These people are not your playthings. The flying tank then comes crashing down in the village as Kal says the sunstone dust will shield you, as he goes around the town shielding everyone with the sunstone dust cape from the ensuing explosions. We then start getting narrations from a report Lane writes up as it says, Lazarus field agent after action report. My first thought was that it had to be the suit. But while the subject's advanced battlesuit does display otherworldly properties, possibly including some level of sentience, after direct observation, this agent can say with profound certainty it isn't the suit. This Superman is plenty super all on his own. The full extent of the subject's powers remains uncharted. It is my impression that even he does not fully understand the limits of his abilities, as if this is all relatively new to him as well. In some way, Superman is very much still a boy, one who hasn't yet fully deciphered who he is. And in other ways, every bit a man, with an ethos that seems unshakable. After Superman shields everyone with his cape, he tells everyone in the village, it's okay, don't be afraid of the dust. That's right, the Sunstone Dust Cape can act as a shield and apparently also help heal wounds. This thing is crazy, but as Kal continues helping the villagers, we keep getting narrations of Lane's report that continues to say subject switches from a shy, soft-spoken demeanor to a more confident, commanding presence, depending on circumstance, without either facet coming across as an affectation. This feels like a man who cannot help but be earnest, who could never lie even if he needed to. We know from other sightings that he has traveled the globe. He speaks multiple languages, but somehow he still has the air of a lost child, of a life in some way interrupted, of a son without a home. A deep mistrust of authority seems ingrained. Suspect will prove quite difficult to apprehend. Despite repeated attempts, this agent never really had a chance. Suggested course of action, further study, intense study. I hereby formally request a full-time Superman assignment. We then see Agent Lane's private notes that says he smelled like oak barrels full of burgundy, stored for 1,000 years in a musty basement. He smelled amazing. So we're seeing signs of her falling for Kal already. After helping the people and having his suit wrap around him once more as he was using it to heal the people, he tells Lois, thank you for letting me help them and not interfering. She says, you're welcome. He then tells her, there's a place in the Arctic Ocean, islands with more polar bears than people, where the sun sometimes shines for days on end. But when it's night, you could see more stars than you could possibly imagine. So many of those stars are orbited by nothing but chunks of rock and methane. Do people have any idea how precious a place this is? I'm a child of one of those sons of nothing, my planet. She says, what? What are you trying to say? He then says, my planet was called, but before he could say Krypton, Soul finally is able to get the cuffs off. So essentially both of them were starting to warm up to each other finally, but at that moment the cuffs were freed, which ruined the moment as Lane says, wait, don't just let me, as he jumps off. Later on we see Lane giving her report to Brainiac, who's asking how grave of a danger would you rank the subject on a scale of 1 to 10? She responds, I wouldn't rank him as a danger at all, not in that way. He's incredibly powerful, yes, and still raw in some ways, but I don't think he's looking for a fight. He doesn't strike me as someone we ought to worry about. Brainiac says, ranking of 8, noted. Lane then says, no, that's not what I was. Brainiac interrupts her again saying, do you feel the threat possesses warrants of neutralization, or can Superman be controlled? She says, no, he can't be controlled. Brainiac says, agent advises termination, so noted. She then punches the computer saying, damn it, you're not listening, stupid computer, as the Brainiac system says, this completes your after action report. The Brainiac algorithm thanks you. At that moment, one of her colleagues or superiors comes in saying, all right, Lane, sounds like you're done. Go ahead and get out of here. Nice work today. But she basically tells him, I don't think I'm done with my report. I know what the automated system said, but I think I need to write this report myself. He tells her, but you hate writing reports. Nobody hates writing reports more than you. She's like, yes, but it's important. I get my thoughts down accurately. My thoughts, not Brainiac's. He then basically says, fine, do what you want. Good luck. As she starts writing a report, which is the narrations we were getting from her earlier. The comic then takes us back to Krypton, where Kal and Krypto run out of their house saying, a power outage. Come on, Krypto, let's hurry before the clerics decide to turn the lights back on. And while they go play, we see Kal's parents working on what we can tell becomes Kal's suit. Jor-El asks, has it been field tested? Laura responds, you mean in outer space? space? Sure, I built this when I was 12 years old, but the numbers hold up. The design is solid. Exploratory spacesuit and rocket ship all in one. Yes, I believe it'll work. We're just going to need a lot more sunstone. So we basically learned that Superman's suit and cape was made by his mother to be an exploratory spacesuit and rocket ship. So his suit is kind of everything all in one. In fact, in one panel, we see he could even make weapons. So the possibilities with the Superman and his suit are endless at this point, as they're basically telling us his suit alone could make or do anything, kind of like a technological symbiote. We even see them talking about how they're going to get enough sunstone to make enough to get everyone off Krypton safely. Jor-El says, if the Science League won't listen to what I have to tell them, then I'll steal all the sunstone I can carry, and you will build a ship big enough to hold everyone we love. We then see Kal make his way to Venezuela as Lois Lane finishes her report, and on the last page, the Peacemakers start killing the people that Superman just saved in the village. As they say, we'll teach them that peace has a price. And there you have it, friends, Absolute Superman issue 2. This was yet another great issue, and I'm loving all the new things we're finding out about this Superman, like how his suit works, and that it's made from sunstone dust. It could also shield him and heal people, and apparently even create weapons, so it's pretty dynamic. I can't wait to see what a fully realized Absolute Superman does with all his stuff, because he's not even able to fly at this point, he's just jumping far distances. Not to mention, we're already starting to see Lois take a liking to this Superman. I think this is a really fun setup for their relationship because she's not just a reporter. She's an agent of Lazarus who's supposed to be opposed to Superman, so that creates some interesting story opportunities.
All right, so that concludes the first 2 issues of the Last Dust of Krypton arc. Now let's see what's next with issues 3 and 4.
The first page of the issue takes us to Krypton 6 years in the past. In fact, the entirety of this issue focuses on this flashback. Anyway, in the first panel, we see Kal-El racing some of his classmates, as his captions say, as a child on Krypton, I was deemed too slow, too coordination challenged to qualify for the Law Guild Training Academy. School was always a challenge for me, so my grades were never going to be good enough to get into the Science Academy. Not that I wanted those things for myself anyway. I was happy in the Labor Guild, was happy in the Redlands. As we see him, his parents, and Krypto are going camping in the Redlands as they come to what looks like Superman's iconic Fortress of Solitude, but red. When they walk inside, Kal starts getting super excited, but his parents say, we want to talk to you about something, son. Initially, he says, about where we're going fishing tomorrow? They say, we got a message from your teacher, at which point Kal is like, oh. His mom tells him, your teacher said you've been refusing to utilize the Science League's Luminarium for your reports, that instead you're writing them yourselves. His dad then tells him, Kal, you understand that when you do that, you're challenging 3,000 years of Kryptonian tradition. Kal replies, I know, I can't help it. My words make me happy. Theirs are just words. His dad responds, well, it's affecting your grades and getting you into trouble at school, and your mother and I, we've talked about this a lot. His mother then says that when it comes right down to it, we really just have one thing to say to you, Kal. Keep it up, as they rub his head. He's all like, what? Really? They then tell him they don't care what his grades are or what they say, that he's the sharpest, most caring kid in the whole world, and they trust him to find his own path. They continue to say, we can't tell you it's going to be an easy road going against the ways of the Science League, but we support you. Kal then tells him, I don't know what I want to do, but whatever it is, I already know where it'll lead me. Right here. As both his parents look out of the Redlands with sadness because they know Krypton is slowly dying. On the next page, they begin camping, and captions from Kal say, we've been camping in the Rao Mountains many times, but something was different about this trip. My father spent a lot of time taking samples from deep within the mountains. And one night I could have sworn I heard my parents sobbing, as his father is finding more leaks of the green gas all over the Redlands. Kal continues to say, ever since his accident at the mine, my father had seemed distant, distracted. In the days after our trip to the Rouse, my parents became consumed with their work more so than ever before. But as he's saying this, we see both of his parents trying to see if they could fix what's happening to Krypton. As Kal's spying on his parents, Krypto starts barking, and when Kal follows him, he sees several small animals dead with green gas coming from their bodies. Kal's captions continue to say, there's something happening to Krypton that I've never seen before. I was painfully quiet as a kid, avoided eye contact at all costs with anyone who wasn't my dog or my parent. But in that moment, standing on the cusp of a story that would change everything forever, something inside me unlocked. As he gets on his bike and goes to investigate with Krypto. While he's investigating, he finds the green gas all over the Redlands, saying across the Redlands, farmers' crops were dying, withering away overnight for reasons they couldn't explain. Animals were behaving strangely. Herds of Zerts were stampeding themselves off cliffs. Essentially, we find out that this version of young Kal-El was inherently a reporter. He doesn't care about science books or anything of that sort. He just wants to report and talk about what he sees. He wants his word to get out there, as he said to his his parents. So Jason Aaron is basically embedding that reporting nature in a young Kal that still lives on Krypton. Anyway, as Kal's investigating this, his captions say if something was sick inside the planet, it would make sense that the first people to feel the pain would be the ones with their hands in the dirt. But according to the official Science League newsfeed, this was nothing unusual. Natural gas leaks, they said, an isolated problem, no cause for concern. The week after I was camping in the mountains, my class took the train to Kandor for a field trip. Along the way, I started to put it all into writing, everything I've seen across the Redlands. The words flowed out of me almost as fast as I could type them. As we see Kal typing all of his thoughts on a laptop again, really cementing that reporter personality very early on in this version of Superman. Now, once Kal reaches Kandor, he finds his dad being taken away by officers as his dad yells, "You have to listen to me, damn it. I'm a geological engineer. I know what I'm talking about. Your lives are all in danger." The officers tell him scientific heresy, threatening officers of the Law Guild. "You don't know when to quit, do you, laborer? Let's go." Jor-El says, "You can't do this. I have to talk to the clerics." Kal then says, "Dad?" His dad turns to him saying, "Kal, get out of here. Go home. Tell your mother." Kal, enraged at what they're doing to his father, tries to fight the officers, but of course, it does nothing. They just push him to the ground, so he does what his father asks and gets his mother. When he tells her what's going on, she goes and gets her invention, Soul, aka the AI living suit Superman is now using in the present, which was invented by his mother. So she takes it out for a test run to free her husband from the Central Law Guild office in Kandor. She breaks right through those doors with her new suit, essentially throwing lava on them, which she can control. In any case, as she starts hitting the officers with it, they say her gun appears to be shooting lava. Another officer says, "It is lava. Her gun shoots lava. Get this armor off me. It's burning the armor." Yeah, it's kind of awesome. So at this point, the officers are like, "Commence lethal injection," as they send in lethal projection flying drones that look like spiked balls. While she's taking care of these lethal injections, she sends Krypto, who's also wearing a piece of the suit that forms this awesome sentient cape, to go find Jor-El. So Krypto does, and when he finds her, Laura goes full armor mode, blasting him out of his cell as her cape starts fluttering and moving, protecting her like a shield, similar to what Spawn's cape does. It is so badass. We then see what Kal is doing, as his captions say, "My mother was marching through the central law offices of Kandor, blasting away. The place should have been swarming with shock troops and judge generals. Why wasn't it? No law guilds, no clerics in the towers. Where were the ruling class of Krypton?" As he sees they all have already left Krypton in a starship. That's right, the ruling class knew that Krypton was dying and it was going to explode, but they just kept gaslighting Jor-El as they didn't want this to get out to the working class and cause panic, making it harder for the elite to flee to safety. On the way back to their house, the Kal's parents say, "We have to tell you something," but he already knows Krypton is dying and he has to leave on a ship all by himself. And they're like, "Yeah, some of that's right, but it's not all right. You going by yourself, we would never shoot you into space alone. We're going together. Also, our cousins and our neighbors, as many Kryptonians as we can hold. I only wish the ship was big enough for the whole planet," as they revealed a massive ship they've been making to escape. So this flips the whole Superman dynamic on its head. In almost every version of Superman, it's always been him being rocketed to Earth by himself. But finally, we get one where they built a ship big enough for the whole family and others to come, which is kind of like, yeah, why didn't this happen sooner? It's just really cool to flip the OG dynamic on its head and have his parents and family go with him. The only question is, what happened to his parents if they were with him on the ship? Or did they not make it on the ship like they were supposed to? Because the comic basically ends with Kal looking at the ship and his parents saying, "Where are we going?" Then on the last page of the book, we're brought to Central Kansas in the present, where we see an old Martha Kent at the Smallville Senior Living Center, apparently dying. She says, "Angel, where did you go? Fly back to me. My sweet angel boy. Back to where you belong." So it seems like she's talking about Kal. Maybe he met her originally when he first got to Earth, as there's a picture by her bed with her and John Kent and a brunette boy in the middle. But we're just gonna have to wait and see what happens in the next issue. Issue 4 picks up with Lois Lane questioning several people from all over the world that were saved by Superman. She's looking for clues to track him down, and towards the end of their conversation, we find out these individuals don't trust Lazarus Corp. Lois says, "I get it, they promise you prosperity, but you live in an informal settlement with 400,000 other workers. I'm not asking you to trust Lazarus. I'm asking you to trust me, and I'm fully aware that I have to earn that trust. So forget the other questions I was asking for a second and just tell me one thing. Who gave you that wound?" As she looks at a woman with a bandaged eye. On the next page, we see Agent Lane beating the crap out of a Peacemaker saying, "You're Crenshaw, right?" He then tries to get up with a bloody mouth saying, "I'm gonna kill you." She says, "I hear you like to cut people for fun. Which hand's your knife hand? You don't show me, I'll assume it's both." So he raises his knife hand, and as she grabs it, she breaks it while saying, after this, we're done here, Peacemaker. Except for one last thing, you're under arrest. So like we've been seeing throughout the series thus far, though Agent Lane works for Lazarus Corp, she's clearly conflicted on how the Peacemakers treat people and their approach of catching Superman. Essentially, we're learning she's a good person at heart, trying to do the right thing. We then get the responses of the people she's been questioning on the next page as they say to her, I know why you're asking these questions. I know why you are chasing him. Even if you yourself do not, it changes you. Being in his presence. You feel this now, I can tell. You sleep for many hours yet still don't want to wake because when you sleep, you could see him, yes? Burned into the darkness behind your eyes. Sometimes when you try very hard, you could even feel the sizzle of his dust in the air. A woman she's questioning then says, I couldn't find him, and neither will you, because he is a whisper. As the man follows up saying, a whisper who walks among the screams. He sees all children in cages, grown men weeping on the factory floors. As you say, he is afraid, but not afraid of you. The Superman fears the day Lazarus will drive him to such anger that he cannot help but save this world by killing you all. I pray for this. We all pray for such a thing. In every language and every slum across the world, it is why he has come to us. I know. We pray for the Superman's rage. As Lois is continuing her search in Pakistan, she gets a call from her father, retired General Lane. Her dad tells her, referring to Superman, I'm looking at the drone footage right now. This damn Superman shakes off 50 cows like gnats on a cow's ass. They say his eyes emit some kind of electromagnetic nonsense that could turn everything in his zone of action, buildings, Chinook, you, into a big greasy puddle. You find him, you Hiroshima that freak, and pick up your medal on the way out. Lois then says, I did talk to him, Dad. I chased him across 6 continents, stood in every shack and hole he slept in. Talk to anybody who so much as stood downwind of the guy. He's destroyed 1 trillion worth of tanks, but his body count is a standing joke. A big fat 0. He's not a killer, not a soldier. He's just some sort of, I don't know, mumbly little hippie boy. Her dad responds, that's what they said about Charles Manson once upon a time. Take the Peacemakers with you, Agent Lane. She then tells him, you're retired, General Lane. Do I need to remind you what that means? He tells her, you don't have to remind me of a damn thing, girl, as the panel zooms out and we see he has lost both of his legs and now uses 2 robotic ones. He tells a story about how he had an officer back in the day that thought like her and wanted to go into a zone without military support as the people there wouldn't trust him. But it backfired and he ended up getting killed by a bandsaw. So he's essentially just warning his daughter, I know you want to do this, but you need to be safe, especially with the Omega Men terrorist groups out there. But it doesn't matter what reality Lois is in, she's gonna do things how she wants to do them. So she sets out telling the Peacemakers, going out fellas, and she makes sure they understand she's going alone. As she's walking alone, she's spotted by 2 armed people watching her in an alley. We are then brought back to a Peacemaker therapy session as he's telling the Brainiac algorithm, which runs Lazarus Corp, in the Peacemakers, I couldn't help myself. The way he tossed us around like we were nothing, melted our armor with his eyes. And those people, they were smiling about it, having a great big laugh on the inside. You could tell. He's basically trying to tell the Brainiac algorithm he snapped and he started killing people that were laughing at him on the inside. Brainiac then says, yes, you were in shock from the trauma you had encountered at the hands of the Superman, and your weapon accidentally discharged in the vicinity of unarmed civilians. Luckily, no one was hurt. No doubt it was your Peacemaker training that prevented any injuries. He says, no, my hand was shaking, but I was trying. I was definitely trying to shoot them. I was trying to maintain peace at all costs. Sometimes I worried that I could do really awful things. The Brainiac algorithm says again, Brainiac understands what you're saying is your gun misfired. He's like, no, that's not what I'm saying at all. But obviously the Brainiac algorithm doesn't care what he's saying and wants to cover up anything he did, even if he's snapping to protect the Lazarus Corp. As Brainiac says, this concludes your therapy session, Peacemaker Smith. Lazarus thanks you for your service, telling us this is Christopher Smith, the one and only Peacemaker we know from the main DC universe. Meanwhile, we see Agent Lane realize she's being followed and ambushes the person by putting a gun to his head because of course she did. The young man says, it's not what you think. She says, I think you're one of the Omega Men here to kill me. He says, okay, it's sort of what you think. As we see he has red hair and freckles, clearly telling us this is the absolute universe version of Jimmy Olsen. He then says, I'm not here to kill you. She says, good, because you seem really bad at that. Keep your hands where I could see them. He tells her, I know what you've been told about us, Agent Lane, but Lazarus is built on lies. I mean, you're a smart woman. Haven't you ever wondered if you're really on the right side? As he activates his mask to fully go over his head, setting off a blinding light saying, you'll be blind for a good couple of minutes. Lower the gun, Lane. I just want to talk. But she punches him in the stomach saying, if you think I haven't been trained to fight while blinded, you don't know as much about Lazarus as you think. Stay down. He then leg sweeps Agent Lane saying, I know you've been with Lazarus for 3 years ever since your father's accident. You're one of their sharpest agents. But I bet I know more about your employers than you do. Do you even know who the Lazarus director is and what he's doing to the working poor? They ultimately come to a standoff, pointing both of their guns at each other's faces, but but then Jimmy realizes something and says, run. As gunfire starts coming from above, he then stands up saying, wait, hold your fire. I could still reach her. I know I can. But the voices say, you had your chance, Alpha. Fall back. Omega Prime will take it from here. Now elsewhere, the Peacemakers can see and hear all of the shots fired as they say, shots fired in the slums. Agent in need of assistance. One of the Peacemakers says, Smith, you're on point. Smith then says, peace at all costs. Peace at all costs. As the other Peacemaker says, Christopher Smith, get your damn head in the game. He tells them, yes, sir, as the Peacemakers make their way to the slums to help Agent Lane. On the next page, we're taken to Omega Prime where she begins to fight Lois. And Lois says, let me guess, Omega Prime? She responds, oh, call me Primus, dearie. After all, I'm an old friend of the family. How is the General these days? A bit shorter than the last time we met, I wager? Telling us she's the one who cut his legs off. At this point, Alpha or Jimmy shows back up with Primus saying, Alpha, I told you to fall back. What the hell do you think you're doing? Are you pointing that gun at me or her? Alpha responds, I'm not sure. I just think we all need to take a moment to. As red mist starts surrounding all of them, he says, what the hell is this? And we know exactly what this is. This is Superman's sentient cape and or suit, which he's using to blast the Omega Men. But Primus gets back up saying, it's him, Primus to all Omega Men. He's here, we found the Superman. Superman, the Omega Men stand ready to help you in your fight against Lazarus. Please, come with us, and together we can. But Superman just slaps her away with the sentient cape. He then sees Agent Lane and says, you, stop looking for me. She tells him, I just want to talk. He responds, I have nothing to say to you. She then says, then I'll do the talking, but please, just give me a moment of your time. At this point, the Peacemakers arrive with Peacemaker Smith saying, on the ground, everybody down in the name of Lazarus. They then take Lane as she says, no, you idiots, get back. I'm in charge of this. The Peacemakers then say, it's the Superman. All units respond. As they set their laser sights on him with Peacemaker Smith being like, that's him all right. Remember me, pal? Superman responds, no, while freezing all of them with his frost breath. We then see Alpha record Superman on his phone as he flies away, with Agent Lane saying, damn it. She then looks at the frozen Peacemaker Smith saying, you jackbooted morons did this. You lost me, Superman. And you let the Omega Men get away. Can you hear me in there, popsicle brains? Does it hurt? But Peacemaker Smith just moans as she says, I sure as hell hope it does. Elsewhere, we see Primus smack Alpha across the face saying, imbecile, this is your fault. You had your chance to take the shot at Lane, and you failed. I'm starting to think you don't have the commitment it takes to rise above the rank of Alpha, and to save this planet from those you think who own it. Are you hearing me, Olsen? He says, you can call me Jimmy. Anyway, he continues to say, yeah, Primus, it's just, I believe Agent Lane can be convinced. She's got a good heart. I know it. She just needs more time to accept what the little voice inside her head keeps whispering to her every single morning. That just maybe she's on the wrong side. Then on the last page of the issue, we see all the Peacemakers holding back Peacemaker Smith, saying, Smith, stand down, get his gun, get him in restraints. Smith then says, what happened? He spit on us. Superman spit on us like we were nothing, and everyone was laughing. What did I do? Another Peacemaker answers, oh, not much, tough guy. You just brought a storm down on our heads is all. As we see in a fit of blinded rage, Peacemaker Smith killed several civilians. And with that, Absolute Superman 4 comes to a close. All right, Absolute Superman issue 5 opens up on Krypton 6 years in the past. It has captions from Kal-El saying, those days after the story broke were difficult ones, violent ones. After my entire family was sentenced to death by the Science League Law Guild, shock troops raided our home, forcing us to fight our way to safety. But there was no safe place left on Krypton, not for us, not for anyone, as we see the L's trying to escape the Law Guild shock troops. Then on the next page, we see the L's driving away in a massive dump truck, with Lara saying, they're blocking the roads, what do we do? And what Jor-El does is drive right through them. As Kal-El's narration continues to say, the world knew the truth, that Krypton was breathing its last, and the Science League had known for months, but they'd hidden the truth while secretly enacting their own plan for escape. In the wake of this revelation, the planet began to explode in more ways than one. Riots swept the Redlands, along with rumors of massacres in the cities. We could see the towers of Kandor burning in the distance, and all the while the planet was coming apart beneath us. I don't know which was worse, how we Kryptonians had abused our home world, or what we did to one another in those our final shameful hours. And as he's saying this, we see the elite of Krypton fighting the blue collar, and the L's make it past the guards and chaos into the Redlands, which looks like a red fortress of solitude. And inside is the ship Martha built. While working on the ship, she tells Jor-El, maybe I can configure the Starside engines one more time, make enough room to squeeze another person on board, maybe two. Jor-El says, Laura, you said so yourself, there's nothing more you could do without compromising the ship's integrity. She then tells him, but there are so many people still out there, Jor, more cousins and neighbors. They then look at the people with them, and Jor says, this will have to be enough. Kal's captions then say, rage swelled within me as I watched my parents weep. And I remember swearing to myself that whatever world we found our way to next, we would make better than this one, no matter what it took. As Krypton starts to explode, we're then taken back to Earth at the Peacemaker's outpost in current time. As they prepare for Superman to arrive, the Peacemakers say, here he comes, hold your position. demolitions. Good God, how the hell are we supposed to stop that? Another Peacemaker says, like you're damn well paid to. Like peacemakers, open fire. They then start unleashing their tanks on Superman, but Superman just easily destroys all of them. Inside, a Peacemaker says, Tank Division, report your status, over. Tank Division, do you copy? But they do not, as what seems like lava starts melting the vault door they're standing behind. And when the lava breaks through, the Peacemakers are burned back, with us seeing Superman standing there. As captions from Superman say, there are 23 people dead in Orangi Town, gunned down for the unforgivable crime of laughing at a man with a gun. No one is laughing now, as Superman picks up one of the Peacemakers by the collar, throws him on the wall, and asks, where is Christopher Smith? He murdered 23 innocent people. Where is Lazarus hiding him? But the Peacemaker can get nothing out besides, please don't kill me. At the same time, Sol, Superman's artificial intelligence, tells Superman, I'm close to finding the whereabouts of Christopher Smith. His whereabouts are heavily encrypted, and I'm also defending off a series of counterattacks. Someone called Brainiac is attempting to infiltrate my systems. Sol then continues to say, I found him, Brainiac. He's at a research and development facility in the Nevada desert. The room is filled with miniaturized alien cities stored in bottles. Cal, there are people inside them, people who won't stop screaming. Brainiac wants to speak with you. He is offering Smith's whereabouts. We can find him at, but before he can finish, Superman just blasts off. We're then taken back to Krypton at the Red Lens back then. As Laura says, isn't everybody on board now? We can't wait any longer. Let the ship bond with you and become your spacesuit. Every part of the vessel is a whole in and of itself, so we'll all be safe once we take off. And Cal. She then realizes Cal is not on the ship, but instead outside, still with Krypto, saying bye to his world. But as his mom calls for him, the Earth collapses and he almost falls to his doom if it wasn't for Krypto saving him. Then at Kandor, we see the elite telling the blue collar to go back to their homes by order of the Science League. They then order their soldiers to keep the people back and to kill them if they have to, because the ships can't take off if they keep crowding like they are, as the people just want a way off the planet as well. Kal-El's captions say, the clerics conspired for months to build ships to evacuate the Kryptonian elite from the dying planet. What could Krypton have accomplished in that time if the guilds had allowed themselves to work together? More people would have been saved, no doubt. Maybe not all. Ultimately, the crowding didn't allow the ship to take off as the planet starts to explode. Cal continues to say, on board our ship, people were crying, everyone was frightened, but the strangest thing happened to me once we took flight. I felt a profound calmness come over me, a confidence I had never known, as he calms a little girl who's scared, saying, don't be scared, this is a great ship, the best that's ever flown. My mom and dad built it. Cal then says, I felt hope. I think I even smiled, and then with the speed of a bullet fired from a gun the size of a planet, that hope was torn asunder. As we see fragments from Krypton exploding come straight for the ship, slicing it in half. But Sol and/or the ship tells them, do not be afraid, I am Sol, your exploratory spaceship. I will protect you. As it makes ships for each and every person on board, Cal quickly finds Krypto and then his parents, who are right next to him in another ship, saying, we're with you, son, always. But the debris keeps getting stronger as the planet continues to blow up, causing everyone to be engulfed in the explosion, all but Kal-El. As he breaks free from the debris explosion, he asks, Mom, Dad, can anyone hear me? As the ship continues to launch him further and further into space. Back on Earth now, we see Superman land somewhere as Sol asks, Cal, I don't understand. As I told you, I was close to uncovering the location of, Superman replies, forget Smith. I don't want to know where he's hiding, because I'm afraid if I get my hands on Smith, I'm afraid of what I might do to him. Right now, I just need to be alone, and mostly, I need to be reminded, Sol, of home. As we see on the last page of the issue, he's landed in Smallville, Kansas. So Superman was so pissed off, he's like, if I don't go back home, I'm gonna kill this Christopher Smith. That's what's gonna happen. But there you have it, the first half of Superman's origin. We now know why he ended up on Earth alone and what happened during the actual explosion and evacuation. But don't fear, we're gonna find out the second half in Absolute Superman issue 6, so let's get into it. All right, issue 6 starts off in deep space 6 years ago, where we see Cal flying further and further in space. We see him at 8 days since Krypton exploded, which turns into 8 weeks, and then 8 months, ultimately leading to 17 months, 14 days since Krypton exploded. At this point, Sol tells Cal, you have not consumed your daily allotment of rehydrated protein slurry. But Cal ignores him and basically says, we're 9 million light years from Krypton. And remind me, Sol, how many habitable worlds have we found? Sol is all like, I don't understand, you know the answer to that. But Cal reiterates, how many? So he answers, 0, Kal. The answer is 0. Having sunk into a deep, dark depression, Kal tells Sol, I don't want to do this anymore. You can keep going if you want, but just let me out. It's okay. You did your best. Don't worry about me. Just drop me here right into that big yellow sun. But Sol is all like, you know I cannot do that. I am sworn to protect the last vestige of the House of El. But as luck would have it, they stumble upon Earth, and as they enter its atmosphere, Kal is all like, why is it so hot in here all of a sudden? I'm burning up. Sol, turn around and get us away from that star. But Sol says, success, life-sustaining world detected. We're then brought to Smallville, Kansas at a farm, but not just any farm. Of course, it's the Kent's farm, as we see John and Martha Kent looking at their dry, dead crops, with John saying, damn, the weatherman said there'd be rain. But Martha tells him, Lazarus is keeping it from raining on us, John, because we won't sell. He says, Martha, we both know such a thing ain't possible. She tells him, they got tanks that could fly like helicopters, Jonathan. I've seen this one video about these pits of theirs that'll make you younger for 1 million a minute. They say the fella who owns the company may be way over 100 years old. John's all like, it's Lazarus who wants you believing that mess. In any case, they continue to discuss how they could save the farm as we see Kal crash land on their farm in a fiery blaze. As Sol says, Kal-El, I regret to inform you that my energy cells have become quite depleted. I must power down now for a brief moment. As the Kents approach, Kal screams out in Kryptonian towards them as he faints. John then says, my God, I'll get to the house and call 911. But Martha's all like, it's just a boy. John tells her, a boy who fell out of the sky on fire. Martha then gets down saying, where did his ship go? It's like he absorbed it, with John telling her, stay away from him, Martha. She then says, we were standing here a minute ago asking for a miracle. John then says, I asked for rain, not no dead boy. Martha responds, he was covered in flames, but look at him now, not even burned. What more evidence do you need? Don't you know an angel when you see one? So of course Martha takes him in to nurse him back to health, and over the next several days while he's in a coma, we see him lash out with super strength, even start levitating over the bed. At one point his heat vision even starts to manifest, as narration from Kal recounting this says, so weak yet somehow so strong. Didn't know where I was, didn't understand a word of the language. Closed my eyes and I was still on Krypton, covered in lava. When my eyes were opened, all I wanted was to cry, but something kept burning away the tears, which of course was his heat vision. Eventually John goes to Martha saying, we can't keep him here. If we do, he's gonna be the death of us. You know that, right? She responds, he's just confused, suffering, don't know what he's doing, the poor thing. He's been through something awful to get here, you can tell. He asks, and what about us? What about what we've been through? We're gonna lose the farm if we ain't out there getting something from those fields. Martha then tells him, John, I love you, but we've already lost it. You know that. But just maybe we can still save him. But as she says that, Kal wakes up and flies through the wall of their house. On the next page, we get narration from Kal as we see Kal running and standing in the Kansas fields. The narration says, I tore through a house and fields and some sort of town before I even realized I was running, somehow running so blindly fast that the world around me was a blur. Me, Kal-El, slowest, clumsiest kid in all the Redlands. But this wasn't the Redlands. Krypton had exploded in a bottle of fire. This was a strange alien world where the sun made me want to claw the skin from my bones. What was this land of surreal horror where Sol had stranded me? I would come to learn it was a place called Kansas, waves rippling through a sea of gold that stretched to the horizon. No sound to be heard except the wind. I had flown 9 million light years, yet somehow, impossibly, I was home. We then jump to 2 weeks later where Kal has somewhat acclimated to living with the Kents, helping them on the farm, even lifting up their broken tractor and bringing it back to their barn for Martha to work on. We even see Martha thank Kal, saying, thank you for what you've done for us, you amazing angel. And I just don't mean you lugging our tractor around. You saved my Jonathan. I was worried I'd lose him when we lose this farm. You helped him remember who he is. That man would have made a hell of a father. We then see John say thank you to Kal for saving Martha. I'd worried without the farm, she wouldn't have nothing left to mother. And well, I don't think she could stand losing no more babies. I don't know what you are, where you come from, and I ain't never heard no language sound nothing like the one you speak, but I know a farmer's boy when I see one. Now, sometime after this, we see Kal working on a tractor when all of a sudden, Sol finally comes back online, saying, apologies, my recharging took much longer than anticipated. Kal, be warned, I fear the system's yellow sun may supercharge your Kryptonian cells in wildly unexpected ways. Kal just replies, you don't say. Kal then tells Sol, I need you to download whatever language these people speak, then shut up for a minute while I clear my mind. So now, with the English language fully downloaded, Kal walks over to the Kents in his fully recharged suit/AI, saying, my name is Kal-El. I fixed your tractor. John in shock says, my God, as Martha says, Kal-El, such a lovely name. It's a pleasure to meet you, Kal-El. I'm Martha Kent. This is my husband, Jonathan. As Jonathan shakes his hand, he says, my God, with Martha saying, you said that already, John. Soul then tells Kal, I detected some manner of remote drones operating in the skies above with apparent weather influencing capabilities. I took the liberty of disabling them. As we see lightning strike behind Kal, with him saying, thank you, Kents, telling us that Martha was indeed right. The Lazarus Corporation was using drones and tech to stop rain from hitting their farm because they wouldn't sell to them. And with the drones down, it now rained for 3 days straight on the farm, but it still wasn't enough rain to save the Kents' crops that season. But it was something maybe sort of like hope, at least for a moment. We then see an informant spying on the Kents calling Lazarus Corp Homeland Security tip line saying, I'd like to report suspected terrorist activity and an immigration violation. So of course, on the very next page, we see the Kents farm being raided by the Lazarus Corp as they come and grab Kal to take him away, with them saying, the boy's got no ID and no work permit. We're taking him in for processing. And as the Peacemakers are trying to hold him down, they say, little fella's stronger than he looks. Soul then says, Kal, I cannot allow you to be taken in by these men. Kal asks, why are they doing this, Soul? He replies, because we do not belong here. Kal tells him, talk to them. Tell them who we are. Tell them about Krypton. Soul replies, I cannot do that. My mission is to protect you. So Kal yells saying, tell them we have nowhere else to go. As he starts growing with anger, the Kents look at him saying, son, please go. This calms him down and he just takes off into the sky. As captions from him say, I spent months weeping for Krypton, for everything I'd lost. But that day, the tears were different. I wept for the world I'd found, the one I could already tell I wouldn't be able to save, more than I had the last. For almost 5 more years, I would run to other farms, far away, to factories and mines, cities where the people were piled on top of each other like trash, and islands where you could stay for days and never see another soul. But nowhere stayed safe, not for long, and no place felt so much like home as the home that might have been. So that little narration is very revealing. It tells us why he's been traveling around the world, defending random places, and then leaving. But it also gives us a timeline telling us he's been around 5 years since he left the Kents, and or 5 years since he's been on Earth. Now, after this, we're brought to current time in Smallville, Kansas, where we see Lois Lane arrive at Smallville Senior Living, where Martha Kent's at. She's clearly there to ask Martha for more information about Kal. Then right after this, we're taken to the Nevada desert where the Lazarus Corp Research and Development Center is. We see Brainiac talking to someone saying, Agent Lane is quite the dogged investigator. She's required barely any coaxing on my part, just a nudge, really. A voice replies, then all the pieces are in place? Brainiac answers, oh yes, I believe they are. With the voice responding, I must say, I have often doubted your methods, Brainiac, along with your very sanity. Brainiac laughs and says, you would not be the first. The voice then tells Brainiac, but deliver what you have promised me, and you ensure your place in the world that is coming. Brainiac replies, of course, sir, I'm just happy to be a servant to the higher cause. As we see people in robes surrounding a man coming out of a Lazarus pit. As the man says, so say we all. Salvation is close at hand for billions upon billions. Once the Superman kneels at the feet of his holy father, Ra's al Ghul. As we see Ra's al Ghul rise out of the Lazarus pit, revealing he is the true mastermind behind the Lazarus Corp, the Peacemakers, and Brainiac. And with that, the issue comes to an end.
All right, so through issue 6, we not only have the origin of Absolute Superman and an initial understanding of what happened with Krypton, but we also now know that Ra's al Ghul is behind the Lazarus Corp and that Brainiac is a major player. But issue 7 gives us the full reveal of Absolute Brainiac and his backstory. But it also tells us why he's so interested in the last son of Krypton, so let's jump in. Issue 7 starts off in the Nevada desert where we see the Omega Men saying, Strike Force to Primus, have breached the compound, going radio silent, synchronizing cortexes. Omega, keep your implants clear of emostatic, no signs of life, facility appears deserted. The kind of power this place pulls from the grid, they must be hiding something here, something big. Another Omega Man then says, if it's the server cluster that runs the Brainiac algorithm, there's no way Lazarus leaves the place unguarded. So stay alert, find that server, shut down Brainiac. Nothing can stop the Omega Men, but as he says that, he gets zapped and we see the armor and skin melt off his body. Another Omega Man then asks, what was that? What just happened to Kal? But a totally separate voice answers, why I shrank his skin, of course. As we see, it's clearly Brainiac who shoots more Omega Men with his purple blasts. The panicked Omega Men then begin to say the network is compromised, someone's inside. But before they can finish their sentence, one of the men who got blasted says, can't move, can't even open my eyes. It's like I don't have muscles anymore. Yet another Omega Omega Man says, "My bones, I think I'm puking up my own bones," as we see him doing exactly that, and it is gnarly. The last surviving Omega Man then tries to run away, saying, "Omega Strike Force to base, immediate evac needed. Primus, do you copy?" But it's too late, and he too gets shot with a blast from Brainiac. This makes his hands start to grow monstrously as weird orbs also start popping up around him and sticking to his body. It's then on the next page that Brainiac fully reveals himself, looking like a Frankenstein Clone Wars era Darth Maul hybrid. And he just stands there saying, "I'll take it from here." Brainiac's journal entries then begin to tell us, sunrise today was 6:44 a.m. at 104 degrees east. Average morning temperature was 35 degrees Celsius. Between 9:17 and 9:23 a.m., I killed 3 people and dismembered a 4th. The average afternoon temperature was 41 degrees Celsius. And we're reading all this as we see the last Omega Man he dismembered was screaming in pain in front of him. We then see that Brainiac has brought this Omega Man back to his lab where he is experimenting on him and dissecting him, literally taking his limbs apart, connecting them with all sorts of wires and alien tech. He even removes his brain and places it in a jar of liquid above his head, connecting it to him with various wires. And as all of this is going on, Brainiac tells him, "I wouldn't advise any wiggling in your condition. I took the liberty of, well, I tend to tinker when I'm feeling anxious. It's the darn Superman problem that's got me." He then turns to his shrunken cities that he's been keeping in glass cylinders and picks one up saying, "Useless fleas, a lot of you. Bottled cities from a dozen galaxies and not one of you sludge-brained imbeciles knows a thing? I'll turn your air to acid and boil you alive by the billions. I'll starve you until you eat your own children. Tell me who he is. Who is Superman?" He then begins to shake one of the bottles while saying, "Well, speak up." But the people inside just scream saying, "We know nothing, Almighty Lord Brainiac. Please don't." But he ignores their pleas and smashes the glass jar on the ground as if dropping an ant farm. He then starts stepping on all the shrunken beings saying, "Maggots, morons." From there he collects himself and apologizes to the Omega Man he's torturing and experimenting on, saying, "My apologies. I'm sorry you had to see that. I'm afraid I can lose my mind a bit when I'm angry. I've tried carving the offending parts out of my brain, but I suppose I'll have to keep digging." And if it hasn't already been twisted enough up to this point, he is scratching his exposed brain like a zombie while saying all of this. This Frankenstein-like version of Brainiac then continues to say, "Once I've solved this Superman-shaped puzzle, that is." That's what they call him. This boy who bends steel and leaps through clouds. But no one knows who he is or where he comes from. And Ra's al Ghul is growing impatient. The Omega Man on the surgical table then just moans in pain as Brainiac says, "Yes, it does seem to help when I, well, you know, I haven't always had someone like you, someone I could talk to." Now, all of this together really paints the picture that this absolute Brainiac is completely insane. Dude's just sitting in the corner venting to someone he is actively torturing, even to the point of telling him it's nice to have someone to talk to. It's just nuts. Anyway, as we turn the page, we are then taken back many years in the past where we get the origin of this absolute Brainiac. It takes us to the moment where this version of Brainiac comes to life for the very first time, with his superior telling him, "You are Brainiac 419,732. You serve the collective." Absolute Brainiac then replies, "The collective? What is?" But his superior interrupts saying only level 88 effectors and above are allowed to seek knowledge beyond what they are endowed with at creation. Absolute Brainiac then says, "I see, and may I ask what level am I?" The superior hands him a shovel while saying, "0. You work here. You are never to leave this room. Your function is to dispose of refuse by shoveling it into the liquidator. This concludes the extent of your acquired knowledge. Do you understand your function as I have explained it to you, Brainiac 419,732? But Absolute Brainiac asks, "Refuse? What is refuse?" To which the superior turns around and says they are, as we see a massive mound of thousands, if not millions, of dead Brainiacs piled up in what seems like a junkyard of sorts. Absolute Brainiac then asks, "They are not Brainiac?" To which his superior responds, "Not anymore. Begin shoveling. You're already behind schedule." Absolute Brainiac then says, "Brainiac, my work shift, how long does it last?" And before leaving, his superior says, "For as long as you do." From here, we are taken through a series of panels that show this Absolute Brainiac's entire existence made up of just shoveling dead Brainiacs from around the galaxy into an incinerator or liquidator, which is exactly what was explained to him. But by day 2844, one of the other Brainiacs, or pieces of refuse that he's supposed to shovel into the liquidator, starts to crawl out from amongst the rest, saying, "I am Brainiac 8,238,759. I stab, I kill." To which Absolute Brainiac replies, "I'm sorry, I am Brainiac 419,732. I shovel." Followed by using his shovel to cut the other Brainiac's head in half. So what we're learning here is that there are a bunch of different Brainiacs from around the multiverse, literally millions, as the one he just killed was numbered over 8 million. But Absolute Brainiac Brainiac is number 0, the least important of the bunch and the one who's made to dispose of all these failed or killed Brainiacs. You can think of him kind of like the grunt or the blue-collar bottom of the tier Brainiac, much like Absolute Superman was on Krypton. He and his family were also considered to be amongst the lower class on Krypton, unlike the Science League, who were considered to be the elites, so it gives a nice little comparison between the two characters. In any case, by day 13,638, we see that Absolute Brainiac is still shoveling the refuse into the liquidator while saying, "Thank you for agreeing to see me. I know I'm only a level 0 effector, but I appreciate you recognizing the quality of my labor and allowing me this chance to present a query, esteemed Brainiacs of the collective. My question is, am I refuse?" But as he's saying this, we see that he's only talking to several dead Brainiac bodies that he's propped up. And he's talking to them as if they are the collective, telling us he's been in this room for 13,000 plus days and doing the same thing over and over again, and it's clearly messed up his mind. Because at this point, he's talking to corpses, which explains the behavior we saw at the beginning of the issue. He then continues this pretend conversation as he says to himself, "Yes, I see. That's an interesting perspective, Brainiac. I suppose you're right. I am rather special, aren't I? How amusing. You always say the most humorous things, Brainiac. Thank you, Brainiac of the collective. Thank you for being my friends." So again, this dude has completely snapped at this point, and you can't really blame him. But from here, we jump all the way to day 49,901 as we see Absolute Brainiac has no more refuse left to throw into the liquidator. It seems that his job is finally complete. So he goes to the doors that have kept him locked away for almost 50,000 days and taps on the door saying, "Hello? Is anyone out there? There hasn't been any refuse in a long while. Should I?" But when no one responds, he uses his shovel to pry open the doors, and as he walks out, he says, "Hello? Brainiac?" And as he explores the ship, he sees all these shrunken cities and hanging bottles above him. He also sees other Brainiacs that aren't yet alive in pods. But when he finally makes his way to the cockpit, he realizes he's been on a massive ship this entire time. The now shocked Brainiac then sees his superior from day 1 sitting in a pilot's chair, and he says, "Greetings, are you Brainiac 1? But when he walks over to him, he sees that he is dead and asks, "No, you are more refuse. And I am Brainiac. I am Brainiac." Because at this point, he realizes he is the one and only Brainiac left on the ship. Narration from Absolute Brainiac then begins to tell us, "That day I shoveled my last piece of refuse, then officially promoted myself to level 100 effector. But mostly, I remember seeing the stars for the very first time and staring at them until my eyes began to melt. Staring and wondering what else was out there." From here, we return to Absolute Brainiac in the present, where he continues to say, "In the days since, I've carved my mark across the face of creation, across countless worlds. I have sometimes paused to consider the possibility that it would have been better for everyone, me included, if I stayed in that room with the shovel. But where would the fun be in that?" And again, we see that he is saying all of this to the Omega Man that he is experimenting on. He then walks over to him saying, "I suppose there's nowhere else to turn now, is there? Time to be brave. I'd like to thank you for being here with me for this period, for supporting me in such a difficult moment. Now, contacting the Brainiac Collective." Okay, so this next part is pretty interesting because we learn that while this absolute version of Brainiac was floating through space on this ship all those years, what turns out to be the iconic Skull ship, and despite the fact that he was the last remaining Brainiac on that ship, he is never connected to the multiversal collection of Brainiacs called the Brainiac Collective. That is, until now. And on the next page, we see him standing in front of a bunch of screens as he summons a meeting of the Brainiac Collective for the first time. One by one, the other Brainiacs start to check in, and one of them aggressively asks, "Who called this meeting?" To which Absolute Brainiac nervously replies, "I did." He then tells them, "I submit to the collective data related to a humanoid identified locally as Superman. The dossier I have uploaded includes chemical analysis of a red dust left in his wake. This Brainiac is requesting any and all possible leads related to the subject's identity and/or planet of origin, please." One of the members of the Brainiac Collective then replies, "Superman, what is this idiocy? These readings cannot be accurate. No being in the known universe possesses this manner of abilities. And all the universe is known to the collective. Perhaps he is one of the adepts of Oa. You should send your inquiries to the Black Stars and never again waste the time of this collective with such." But before he could finish that sentence, one of the female Brainiacs speaks up and says, "Krypton, a planet in the Rao sector. The only habitable orb to survive that withering red sun. Your dust sample matches Krypton's thermal signature." This prompts Absolute Brainiac to respond, "I see. And what is known of this Krypton?" She then tells him only that it was and that it is no more. Krypton exploded. No Brainiac ever set foot upon the planet. It never warranted the interest of the collective. Whoever its people were, they never even managed to develop interstellar travel. But this Brainiac did recently visit the former site of Krypton, where I retrieved samples of its meteoroid remains. They display a rather exquisitely virulent range of radioactivity, now transmitting the sample's elemental composition. Then, as the data comes across his screen, Absolute Brainiac's eyes just light up and he says to himself, "Oh my." However, another Brainiac from the collective then chimes in and asks, "I have a query of my own. Who in the name of Kal-El called this meeting? Unknown Brainiac, identify yourself." But Absolute Brainiac now had everything he needed from them, so he turns away from the screens and ends the transmission. From here, Brainiac wastes no time and immediately uses the elemental composition he received to start printing a sample. After which, he turns to the Omega Man he's torturing and says, "Thank you, my friend. You've been very helpful. You're a good listener. But now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." And with that, he finally kills the Omega Man by smashing his brain on the floor. And now with the elemental printing complete, Brainiac prepares to run tests and says, "I want to know how the Krypton meteorite interacts with the dust from Superman's cape," and then sends someone in here to clean up this refuse. As several Brainiac androids he's created respond by saying, "Yes, Brainiac." At the same time, we also see that he's holding the synthetic kryptonite he just created, and as he stares at it, narration from his journal really drives home how twisted this Brainiac is as it reads, "Tonight's sunset will come at 5:26 p.m. at 257 degrees west. At 8:35 p.m., I will command one of my Brainiacs to immolate himself so I may spend 3 minutes watching him die, watching a piece of myself as it blackens and shrivels. Saturn will be visible in the night sky at 9:03 p.m. So yeah, I'm sure he's a blast at parties." Anyway, it's also important to note that the synthetic kryptonite he printed based on the elemental composition of real kryptonite may work differently than the real thing. So while this lab-created version will probably still harm Superman, its effect might not be as potent as real kryptonite. Or maybe it'll be worse. We'll have to wait and see. But on the last page of the issue, it's revealed that Brainiac has also captured Peacemaker Smith. And as he walks into the room, he tells Smith he is an alien, not even of this world. "Tell me, Peacemaker Smith, how does that make you feel?" But the Peacemaker just screams in pain as Brainiac's robots perform the implantation of some sort of armor or robotics onto him. Brainiac then continues to say, "Good, pain is progress. Your implants are responding nicely." To which Smith responds, "What is this? Punishment for Pakistan? Just kill me already." But Brainiac just gets close to his face and tells him, "Quite the contrary, Peacemaker. Director Al Ghul was very impressed with your work in the field. You're being trusted with a very special deployment to what is soon to be the most dangerous war zone on the planet, a place called Kansas." And on the final panel, we get a close-up of Brainiac's creepy smile as a droid approaches the surgical table with a weapon and kryptonite bullets. So on top of another reference to the role of Ra's al Ghul in this universe, it seems as if Brainiac is turning Peacemaker Smith into this world's version of Metallo. At least that seems like a fair bet. And if that's the case, it would be wild. Either way, with that, Absolute Superman issue 7 comes to an end. Like I said earlier, this was another solid issue from Jason Aaron, and it was a smart move to dedicate this entire issue to this Brainiac's origin story, because Brainiac is not only one of Superman's most important and popular villains, they've also been slowly building him up over the previous 6 issues as a deeply menacing figure. So to take an entire issue to highlight him and pay all of that off with a truly twisted version of the character was perfect. The Absolute universe just continues to be amazing overall, and we will continue to cover each of the titles as they roll into their next story arcs. In fact, the next major story arc in the Absolute Superman title, which is going to focus on Brainiac bringing the war to Smallville, has already started in issue 8, which we just covered in this episode right here. So if you like this first arc, you definitely want to watch that one next. But now it's your turn to sound off. What do you guys think of Absolute Superman and the Last Dust of Krypton arc? And what do you think about this new monster-like version of Brainiac? Let us know in the comments section down below. Other than that, we will see you next time when we talk about all things comics.